Welcome to the June 15th, 2022 regularly scheduled board meeting for the Monterey Peninsula Airport District. Thank you for joining us today. Despite being triple vaccinated, I still contracted COVID, so I am not feeling very well and I can't talk that well. So I'm going to turn the board meeting of the chair over to Director Leffel since our vice chair couldn't make it today.
We will start with the call order and roll call.
Director Pick.
Here.
Director Sonny. Absent. Director Leffel.
Here.
Director Sabo.
Here.
Chair Miller.
Here. I'm having a hard time hearing Director Leffel.
Okay, I'll speak out.
We're doing the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which is one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. At this time, I do take the floor and I do open up public comment for any item that is not on the agenda. If you have a comment or question, you can please have it down. All right, I see none of them for public comment. Communications, announcements, and informational items.
Madam Chair, the only one that's left is a reminder for the joint candidature that we hope to do for the Rodeo with the Salinas and Monterey. So that is next Thursday, June 23rd, from 5:30 to 7 p.m.
Okay, so plan and fit. Good job. Great. Consent agenda, action items. Is there anyone in the public who would like to pull an item? Any of my fellow board members want to pull an item? Okay, I'll entertain a motion for approval. Director Sabo, move to approve. I'll move second. Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Director Pick.
I will abstain because I was present for most of the items under.
Director Leffel.
Yes.
Director Sabo.
Yes.
Chair Miller. Chair Miller.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. We have no third items, so we'll get to our regular agenda. Item number 1 is resolution number 1821, authorizing and approving the rates and charges at the Monterey Regional Airport for fiscal year 2023.
Thank you.
Who on staff is?
I am. On behalf of Executive Director, here at a conference for Jumpstart and talking to the airlines about their service. Here's our acting director. Board of Directors, in front of you, you have 4 items for resolutions: Resolution 1821, 1822, 1823, and 1824. These all are related to the fiscal year 2023 operating capital budget. These items were based on the 2 workshops that were provided, one on May 24th and the second on June 3rd, as a workshop for the budget to involve board of directors. Staff is not planning on doing another presentation because there are no changes made to the budget after that or those workshops. We do present to you on behalf of the second director, senior staff, what we believe to be a solid operating revenue and expense budget that will fully support the functions and operations of the airport for fiscal year 2023. With that, we'll entertain questions.
All right, I'll open it up for public comment. If you have a comment on this item, 1821, would you please raise your hand? Okay, I see none raised. I'll open it up for discussion with my fellow board members. Director Chris, Director Beasley.
No questions.
Director Miller, can you hear me? If so, we'll get you done while we can hear you. Do you have any questions or comments on 1821?
I'm sorry.
Carl, do you have any questions or comments on 1821?
No,
Thank you. Director Sable?
I do have some comments. And I will preface, we'll be offering some alternative motions or substitute motions. But my commentary right now on this resolution follows. Today, I believe it's my fiduciary responsibility and duty to reluctantly depart my colleagues and staff and by proposing alternatives to the budget plans presented on our agenda. I will be doing so because I believe we must preserve our cash resources now in order to have the funding for the extremely capital-intensive airport terminal building program established in the future. We're entering a period of great economic uncertainty, including a possible recession that may affect our ability to provide these needed financial resources in the next few years. In my view, in a time of uncertainty, as we are now experiencing, we need to increase our revenues, preserve our grant money, decrease our foreign spending to further build our cash reserves for our terminal project, our parking lot, and hangar projects until we know more about what the FAA intentions are regarding discretionary funding grants and the impact of the economy on our airline partners. Later, we can amend our operating budget and our capital budget upward if we see necessary once we see the FAA grant funding is offered and what the economy is doing to our forecast for Q1 and Q2 of FY23. These are the circumstances that confront us today and have been influenced by the city. The award of generous FAA infrastructure grants to Monterey is very uncertain due to the intense competition from other airports across the country. With that rapidly increasing interest rates, future borrowing for an airport our size will be increasingly difficult. As far as our air carriers go, air carrier flights and enplanements are uncertain in Q2 and 3 and 4. Fuel prices are increasing ticket prices. There is already a decline in deterioration in advanced bookings, which I think are many of our forecasts are based on. Inflation is increasing major travel costs for hotels, rental cars, and restaurants. Pilot shortages are increasing cancellations and limiting additional flight frequencies. Inflation is adversely affecting our consumer confidence and limiting discretionary purchases like air travel and business travel remains slow to get started. If FY23 budgeted revenues fall short of expectations, the proposed operating capital budget expenditures we have in front of us here will reduce our liquidity, and the current proposed budget is projecting a decrease in current cash of nearly $1 million. In addition to the $4 million in district cash already authorized for reducing our CalPERS unfunded liability. If the FAA comes up short of terminal, hangar, and parking grant funding for us at Monterey, we will need to use all of our available liquidity, our cash reserves, and our debt capacity to reduce the debt burden required to fund the difference for construction We have very limited debt capacity. The air carriers will be reluctant to accept higher costs for employment required to fund a new terminal construction, which we know is to be true. And it is unlikely that district taxpayers will put kindly on any kind of a partial tax for airport purposes. In FY '23, we need to hold our operating expenses at near FY '22 levels until we have a clear view of FAA grant funding intentions, and we can see what impact the economy is having on their operations and customer planning. Further, we need to fund FY '23 solutions from available CARES funds to the maximum extent possible to build our capacity. Therefore, I propose on the subject of raising charges that, in addition to what has been provided to us in terms of the staff proposal for raising charges, that we increase commercial aviation usage charges and all terminal space related rental charges for terminal usage by 4.2% CPI, and that we raise hangar rental rates by 4.2%. I might note that I think we have not increased our terminal rental charges for a period of at least 5 years. It's now due for that time. It's now due to that, and also I think in times of this inflation, this is not going to be a severe detriment to the way our air carriers view our cost per employment at this point. So my alternative motion again is increase commercial aviation usage charges and all other terminal space related rental charges for terminal usage by 4.2%, which is the current CPI, and raise the hangar rental rates by 4.2% CPI.
Thank you. And that was a motion. That your motion for this?
That was my alternative.
So for my discussion on the entire item 1821, I really believe staff did a thorough job of looking at the cost and determining that it was prudent at this time to hold the cost down for our tenants, in part because of what Mr. Single said in his description of how he's going to vote on all of these. The fact that we're not out of the woods yet, and I think it's really important. We shared our CARES money with our tenants to a pretty large degree until they pulled through, but they are not totally immune to what's coming. And so I believe that if we're steady and keep everybody in place as we get through this, I also believe as we start more construction, moving dirt and moving the ground, it will affect our tenants. And this is not a good time to raise costs to them because maybe business with a small construction service, even as we find that too. So I will on that ask for a second on Director Cable's motion to raise the rent on the terminals and on the hangars by 4.2%. I think the motion dies for lack of a second. I would entertain a new motion on resolution 21. I have one other thing I want to say, and I got distracted by board member comments. But I also want to say that I really think it's prudent of staff to reduce the business license to $500 a year. It does what we wanted, which is to give us the knowledge of who is on the airport, to make our airport safer, and to make it so that we can work with our tenants together. And that was really what we wanted. It was not about the money. I think we've been assured by Mr. Burkholz that we are at a zero. We're not losing money so that we are capturing money that we're spending, and I'm noticing it. So I really appreciate that you all took a look at that on the budget. With that. So, with that, I would entertain a motion for resolution the rates and charges that.
Madam Chair, so moved.
First, second.
Director Miller seconds.
All right. May I have a roll call, please?
Madam Chair, question on the discussion.
Yes.
Going back to what Director Sabo, I do have a question of staff on the statement that you made. Could you please, if I may, give us a staff position on the proposed increase, understanding it's not part of the current motion? I'd like to have a little better understanding from our staff on that. Go ahead.
Executive Director here really felt that we are not, as we're not under the police yet. Things are plus currently, we need another year of stabilization before we look at increasing it. It will be looking at there was a lot of discussion at the workshop on how we could get there, and there was a long discussion on raising charges. So it really was the recommendation that of staff that we do not make it this year. Of course, there could be, if we believe that the state is a process, we can always come back and review and amendment to the budget. Uncertainty of everything, we need to keep it.
Along with the position of executive director, there also was a discussion at our workshop concerning the new terminal. Part of the plan is to look at a longer-term strategy of approaching the airlines. Our leases are very dated. There's a lot of information that is somewhat unusable at this point, and so the plan is to actually create a new lease that will be presented to the airlines and the rental car companies that will give us a little more currency in our abilities to interact with the airlines. But also at that time is when we want to approach them with the terminal and rate increase. Rather than kind of do it ad hoc, it's really a strategy to approach the airlines and to get them to buy in to the fact that the goal is a new terminal at the airport.
Makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
All right, I have a first and a second on the motion. Can we have
Director Pick,
Aye.
Director Leffel,
Yes.
Director Sabo,
No.
and Chair Miller.
Yes.
Next item is item number 2, resolution number 1822, a resolution authorizing and approving the fiscal year 2023 salary schedule, listing salary ranges for the Monterey second quarter. So I will open that up to the public if there is one. That is coming. All right, I'll close public comment. And I will open it up for discussion with my fellow board members. Director Sabo, we'll start with you.
I have some concerns for our spending plan is upstate with what the unknowns of our economy and our airline partners going forward. And so I will propose an alternative solution. On the salary schedule.
Would you like to propose that right now?
Well, I'm looking, maybe, Scott, I'm not sure that I can propose an alternative resolution. We don't have a resolution. I mean, a motion on the floor.
Well, you're just
How does that work?
So what staff has recommended is just a recommendation. You can make a motion to do whatever you would like.
Okay, so it's not an alternative.
It's not an alternative motion. And I think this is second
Madam Chairman, would you like me to make the motion right now or do you hear? Okay. I move that regarding the FY 23 salary schedule that we delay having all new positions. Third quarter budget review. Having 3 personnel in Q1 is very expensive and it is very hard to unwind this back to being so very salary for us in the next 6 to 8 months. So my motion is to delay adding all new positions on the salary schedule until the Q3 budget review.
All right. To continue the discussion, Director Miller? Do you have anything to discuss on 1822, or would you like to speak to the motion?
Is he still on hold?
Director Pick, while I go to you, we have, would you, first of all, do I have a second on the motion?
Madam Chair, if I may, for those, well, I'd love to hear from the staff in response to the proposed motion before or after a second.
Okay.
I'd just like to hear about it before beginning to speak.
Staff recommendation is adding about 3 positions that were eliminated or deferred during COVID. During that time, operations were down, people were not traveling. We were able to staff at lower staffing levels because of lack of activity. We are back. The activity is back and it's even stronger than it was. We feel very strongly that we are very right on staff. Definitely. So we're back to business as usual. Business is better than it was as far as passenger traffic. And we really believe that this is we need to come back into the book. We've also just started about to change that maintenance person. Another trained maintenance person in the badge position is critical, especially as we move into, as our airlines are hiring, actually all our planes here. This requires airlines, executives, everything is happening. And that is being done by our operations managers right now, which is running out that inspections and helping us. So we really feel it's critical that we have that. And then the public relations is, again, it's a super board, and it's my understanding that the board has been really the executive director to hire someone to develop the best and be a face and voice in the public activities. But we're here, we're going to support them, and we're here to encourage them. So those that's to be contributed.
Thank you. So just to be clear, these are not new positions in the sense of additive in total, but rather renewing positions that went vacant during the pandemic. And the rationale, as I understand it, is tied to increased operations, tempo, at least in 2 cases, and to outreach directed by the board's executive director. Thank you. I'm sure I have no other questions.
All right. Yeah, why don't you set up and speak to your microphone?
Madam Chairman, I have a question for staff.
Go for it.
Okay, just to clarify, this salary schedule that is in front of us has new positions on it, identified new positions. These aren't new positions that were just unfunded in the past. Is that correct?
They are reinstating positions that were funded in the past. Practice here is when a position is no longer funded, to take it off the salary.
Okay, so
We are adding.
just to be clear, what we're looking at in terms of the salary schedule here, comparing it to last year's salary schedule, there are new positions on this salary schedule. Is that right?
That is correct.
All right. And the question that I have in terms of those new positions, which will later we will be asked to fund on the spending plan, revenue and spending plan, what is the cost of those new positions? All in, including that.
Approximately 350,000.
Okay, thank you. Did you say approximately $350,000?
I did.
Thank you. That's it.
Director Miller, can you hear us? Do you have any comments on this, questions on this issue?
I'm sorry, I had a hard time understanding what you said, Marion.
Resolution 1822, do you have comments on that? On 1822, the salaries and staff positions?
No, as the staff pointed out, if things downturn quickly, we can take action like we did before, so I'm fine with it.
All right. I believe that pre-COVID, we were at 28, I think, staff members, is that correct?
Correct.
And so this will take us to
28.
28. So we are going back to where we were in 2019, essentially.
Correct.
And the business has definitely picked up. I was through it again last night. It looks like we're up 22%, over 2019 in several of our categories. So we definitely, it takes more people to service more people coming through the terminal. So, I'm totally in support of that. So we have a motion on the floor from Director Sabo, which is to not fund the renewed positions that are being supported by
In
staff.
fact, my motion was to lay off, adding all new positions. So,
That was my motion.
But at this time, no new positions, no additional positions. Okay. So do I have a second on that motion? All right, the motion dies for lack of a second. I would entertain the new motion on resolution 1822.
Madam Chair, I move approval of resolution 1822.
Seconded by Director Miller.
All right. Roll call, please.
Director Pick,
yes,
Director Leffel,
Yes.
Director Sabo,
no,
Chair Miller,
Yes,
Thank you. Item number 3, a resolution number 1823, a resolution authorizing and approving the operating budget of the Monterey Peninsula District for fiscal year 2023. I'll open it up for public comment. All right, staff like to address this?
We're going to authorize it as presentation on from the budget workshop. It was presented at the budget workshop in 2 different days.
Perfect. I'll open it up for discussion. Director Miller? Any discussion on resolution 1823? Hicks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've watched the video, read the packet. I appreciate the staff work that's gone into this. I also appreciate comments from my colleague about the uncertainty going forward in the future. I know it's only been 30 days, maybe less, since the workshop. But given the dynamic goings on in our economy and increases in inflation, my question to staff would be, have any underlying assumptions change that we should know about that this budget is based on?
None that we're aware of.
Okay. That's all the questions I have at this time.
Director Miller,
Seconded. Oh, my mistake. My mistake. I have no comment.
Director Sable.
Madam Chairman, I do have some comments on the operating budget, our spending, regarding spending. And these are the same comments, all of these, the same comments that made at our budget workshop and also in our finance committee. There's nothing new, but I am very concerned about our spending plan, and that we need to be as conservative as possible going forward. I'm not exactly sure what the question about assumptions were, but I think this budget had some assumptions, and they were presented to us and shared with us as much as two months ago. Things have changed in that amount of time, and I think we need to be conservative on our spending. I have an alternative, or I have a motion I'd like to submit for you regarding curtailing some of the spending that is proposed by in our spending plan.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
if some assumptions have changed, I'd very much like to hear what those are. That's a very important point Director Sable was making. I'd like to understand.
We understand the information that we presented during the workshop to be accurate. There are decisions to be made along the way, but those decisions are part of the budget package.
Very good. Madam Chairman, I'd like to shed some additional information about my state assumptions, changing this.
I think that's.
And that would be my concern is that given the assumptions that were provided to us, but a good staff work, take it better, finance provided to us, those assumptions may no longer be valid because they were at a time when inflation numbers were just beginning to appear to us. Airline fares had not necessarily increased. There are a whole variety of things, and nobody was talking recession going forward. Since that time, my assumptions regarding the proposed spending plan have changed rather dramatically, because I don't think the future for us in Q1 and Q2 of FY 23 are valid. Landor and Brown did a forecast projection based upon bookings, and I think they have bookings going out as far as October. The fact of the matter is that bookings are now beginning to decrease by 3% a month, and over the last 2 months, only we'll probably proceed further for some good logical reasons. It's airfares to go take a trip, a leisure trip that's gone up by at least a third, and business travel has not recovered. So that was my board member, Mr. Crick. Those are my assumptions have changed. The staff, in my presenting those, concerns to the staff in the budget workshop and in the finance committee, they did not change their assumption about the forecast for employment going forward. It is my belief that we should be changing our expectations regarding employment and the amount of revenue that we're going to be deriving out of additional flights. So that's my.
Thank you. So I will make my comments. Director Miller and I spent 3.5 days last week at the AAAE airport conference in Seattle. And we heard from many panels and many experts in the field. Interesting, a conversation between the CEO of Boeing and the COO of Alaska Airlines was that Boeing has just released what their term was cute. They just released 20 airplanes over the fence. So they finished them at the Boeing field and moved them over to Alaska. And it appears that the appetite that airlines continue to have for new, larger planes is ongoing. And the big discussion from marketing and airline flight coordinators, like the people who determine where we have service, was that we are in a very good position. What has happened because of COVID, the world has kind of awakened to secondary feature markets. So people may not be looking for this San Francisco or LA experience, but instead they're looking for the Palm Desert, Monterey, Tahoe, that type of experience, and all of that market has exploded for the airlines. They are saying that we can continue to see increased business. Business passengers are still slow to come back. Conferences are still slow to come back. But our conference had 2,200 people there from all over the world. And the hotel rooms were filled. And it seems to be, at least in the airline industry, that it looks extremely good. The other thing they talked about with COVID was that the passenger traffic and the purchasing of new airplanes by people who've never owned them before. They talked about people who ordered large jets and they're not pilots. Now they can't find a pilot for their large jet, but that they do not want to travel with people like me who can't afford private jets. So they are buying their own travel. So I do believe that we have a downturn. I can put my term back to that. But I do also believe that there is so much pent-up demand for travel, and with what we heard from experts through all segments of the airline industry and the airport, we're in good shape. I support this budget. I believe staff was very careful with it. And I think, as Tim tells us every year, he's very conservative. And I believe that it will hold up. You can always go back in for a mid-year adjustment if we have to. And typically we have had to, but it's because we're increasing the revenue side because it has been so conservative. So anyway, I would entertain a motion for resolution number 1823.
Madam Chair, so moved.
Madam Chair, I have a motion.
I'm going to second that motion. If you would like to make an alternative now, go ahead.
Okay. Regarding the FY23 operating budget categories presented to us here, and finance administration delayed adding the positions of PR specialist, social media specialist until the third quarter of FY23 in the area of Finance Administration again, hold our PR expenditures constant for FY '22, limit social media expense to $15,000 until third quarter, and hold air service development expenses constant with FY '23. And in the planning, development, operations, and maintenance budget categories, delay operations staffing increase until the third quarter, and do not add current maintenance, add to the current state account. That's my motion for alternative motion regarding the operating budget.
All right, we have an alternative, motion. Do I have a second on that? All right, motion dies for lack of a second. I will ask for a roll call on the original motion that was made to support resolution number 18.3, operating budget of Monterey Peninsula Airport System fiscal year 2023 as presented.
And Chair, if I may, comment for roll call?
Yes.
I just want to highlight that I share many of Director Sable's concerns about the economy, about potential downturns. And it strikes me that the staff's work here has taken into account a reasonable risk analysis. So while I share your concerns, I don't find the budget as presented to not be taking those into consideration. I can promise you I will be continuing to watch the budget month on month as presented by the staff to see where this goes. But at this point, I think the staff's work and the committee's work, committee's work has been good, and I appreciate it. That's all I have to say.
All right, roll call, please.
Director Pick,
Yes.
Director Leffel,
Yes.
Director Sabo,
No.
Chair Miller,
Yes,
Okay, item number 4, a resolution number 224, resolution authorizing and approving the capital budget for Monterey Peninsula Airport District fiscal year 2023. I will open that up for any public comment on resolution 1824. Seeing none, I'm going to close public comment and open it up for comment with my fellow board members. Director Sable, can I start with you?
Yeah. Is there any staff comments on this?
No, again, Director Sabo has presented at the workshops for the meeting, recommendations.
Okay. All right. I do have comments regarding the capital budget. Consistent with what I've said before, you know, I remain concerned about trying to preserve our district cash and trying to convert, if possible, our carriage grants, sort of carriage grants into money that we can put into our district cash reserves. And accordingly, I'm concerned about spending money in this current period when we have to look at a rather difficult funding exercise that includes the FAA grants, a very difficult capital market, and any money that we have in our district cash will be needed going forward to fund the difference between what the FAA is able to give us and what will be needed to fund the terminal. Specifically, I'm concerned about the Northwest building abatement in this current fiscal year. It's been there for a long time, and spending $156,000 this year to do that all of these are maybe good projects, but they can be deferred, so we know more. Repairs to 2801, for $350,000. I'm not real clear on why we have to do right now, do upgrades or repairs to a building that we may offer for rent, we may not offer for rent. That's a $350,000 expenditure. And removal of building 1105, well, it's not specified as to whether or not we're going to do it. There's no dollar figure associated with it. I am assuming that that's a desire of the staff to remove that building in the first fiscal year, which is in the capital budget proposal. And finally, the exterior painting of the terminal in this fiscal year for $325,000, I think is kind of unnecessary, considering that we are planning to build a new terminal, and why we need to spend $325,000 to paint this building, but we're gonna possibly tear it down, is a little bit unnecessary. That doesn't mean it may not be necessary in future years. In this current fiscal year, until we know more, I don't think it's appropriate. So I would be offering that motion. And on this particular capital budget segment of our agenda, when it's appropriate.
All right. Director Miller, comment?
No comment.
Director Pick?
No comments.
Right. I would like to say that I think that our staff has strategically and thoughtfully managed the emergency funds that we were fortunate enough to receive in several different iterations. And also that we were really extremely fortunate that the airlines liked our destination and that other people coming here liked our destination, and that some of our people still need to travel out of the area so that we were able to maintain our the routes that we had. But in addition, during this period, we actually put routes on. We put on Burbank and we put on Orange County. And I think that says a lot for our operation and for the strength of our market. So I believe the capital budget is necessary. I think it is also a green light to the airlines to show that we are reinvesting in our property, and also that the FAA is reinvesting in our property, that everyone feels that this is a strong market going forward. So I support this as presented. So would you like to make a motion, Director?
Yes, I would. On this resolution regarding the capital budget, I would propose that we delay the following capital improvement items until the third quarter budget review. And all of these items that I'm requesting for deferral and no funding today are district only, use only district funds, not AIP money from the FAA. The Northwest Building Abatement Program project for $156,000 delay. Repairs to 2801, $350,000 delayed till third quarter review. Removal of building 1105, do not proceed in FY23. Terminal exterior painting, $325,000. And the fund is only if we don't decide not to build the new terminal. That's my motion.
Right, do we have a second on the motion? Seeing none, the motion dies. I would entertain a motion on resolution number Excuse me, 1824. The capital budget now is separate.
Madam Chair, I would move approval.
Got a second?
Director Miller seconds.
Any other discussion on this item?
Madam Chair, I just want to thank the staff for the great work went into this and the packet prepared, briefing was presented. It's a public works guy back in my time. This is important infrastructure work that has to be done in order to sustain as well as attract new business. And I find it solid and appreciate it.
Roll call, please.
Director Pick,
Yes.
Director Leffel,
Yes.
Director Sabo,
No.
Chair Miller,
Yes,
The next item is resolution number 1826. The resolution ordering an election replacing the Monterey County Elections Department to conduct the election, requesting consolidation of the election and stating the determination of the board of directors of the Monterey Peninsula Government District with respect to candidate statements or qualifications. And Mr. Cooper.
Thank you. This matter comes on every year about this time, or every other year about this time, as it relates to elections. Obviously, you know, you are elected officials and as such must be elected every 4 years with staggered 4-year terms. So every 2 years we have to run elections. You have an option of either running the election yourself, which is incredibly expensive. You would be responsible for all aspects of ballot, all aspects of publication, running ballots, polling locations. Alternatively, which is what we have elected every time in my recollection of history of the airport, you can consolidate those with the general election operated by the county. This is a much more cost-effective way to do it. To my knowledge, all of the public agencies in the region consolidate with the county. That way you pay your proportional share of the election expenses. There are 2 seats up for election. We just went through redistricting. So the 2 positions that are up for election, whose term will expire in 2022, are Chair Miller's position in District 4 and Director Pick's position in District 5. Those are the 2 that are up for election. I will note there is a slight change in that the seats that are held by Director Miller and Director Pick are open seats, at-large seats, and with the transition to by district elections, technically Director Pick and Chair Miller are not from District 4 and 5. Technically, they're at large. But this next election will be limited to District 4 and District 5 because we're transitioning to the bi-district. Again, the resolution does give authorization for the executive director, or technically the secretary, the executive director, to sign all of the documents with the county, enter into an agreement with the county to operate the elections. The estimated cost is about $150,000. I suspect it's going to be far less than that, depending on who runs, depending on whether it is actually an election or whether it's by acclamation. But again, we always budget the maximum so that you will always get a pleasant surprise when it's lower than that. You don't want to try and hit the number exactly and then have it be higher than what you expect. You budget the maximum amount, and then again, whatever the lower number is, that's what it is. Happy to answer any questions you may have at this time.
I think we also want to discuss, I think there's on here the statement.
Yes, individuals who run for election on how many people decide to file statements, because there's a publication cost. The more people that file statements, the cheaper it will be, because the postage doesn't change. They have to send it to all of the registered voters. But the number may go down based on, on how many that there are. Typically, the county will set a number and they'll just stick with it. I don't know what that is, but it's managed by the county. In the past, it's been,
So, it's also based on the number of registered voters.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, again, it's a proportional cost. It's based on the number of voters per district and how many individuals they have to send it to, and how many people are in the packet that's sent to everybody. So it is a proportional share. I really, how the county estimates that and figures it out, more power to them. I'm glad I'm not the one that has to, count those, estimate those costs for each individual area. But in the past, my recollection was $1,000.
it was around $1,200 when we ran for that.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and again, the 150,000, my recollection was district-wide. Because we're now in election districts, I suspect that number will decrease substantially, but that's just an estimate.
Could you clarify, Scott, what we figure out the 200-word narrative?
Yeah.
Are we as a board saying it's okay to have 200 words, which
Yeah.
is the county limit, or what's our decision here?
Well, that's your decision. So the short answer is yes. Our recommendation is to allow candidates to file statements up to 200 words. In some instances, you can allow them up to 400 words. In other instances, you can not have candidate statements. I don't recommend either of them. Yeah, I typically will
Phoenix.
for ballot measures, for propositions. It's almost universal, to my knowledge, for candidates to be limited.
I just want to clarify.
But we don't determine that as 200 words and the candidate can.
That's correct.
Okay.
Constituting.
We were invited to the best elevator speech, or the best elevator pitch. Yes, some of those.
I do have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
You mentioned, Council Huber, that there are all the other jurisdictions in that area use the county. Get together with the county.
Consolidate.
My understanding was that Carmel runs their own election, and I think we've gone through this before. Do you have any recollection, or does staff have any recollection of what conclusion we came to if we chose to run our own election like Carmel does? And I'm not contradicting what you said.
Yeah.
Carmel is not doing
My recollection was that Carmel did that for a special election, but not for the general election. But I could, again, I'm going from memory, I did not specifically look it up. And I will tell you candidly, the number of times I looked at my phone, I don't know what I was looking at my phone for. So don't quote me on that. Yeah. So I remember sometimes fallible, but my recollection is that it was a special election where they chose to do that, not a general election. The cost to run a general election and comply with not just you've got to comply with the California Voting Rights Act and all kinds of federal requirements. The cost would be, to use cost prohibitive. It would be a very expensive endeavor. You would have to hire people to manage polling places. You would also have to mail out your own ballot to those who are selected or mail-in ballots, and absentee ballots. You would probably have to hire a company to do it for you, or you would have to employ several people to manage that in-house for you. It would be a very expensive investment.
I would support the resolution as proposed here. But at some point when, have the opportunity, I'd like to know what our conclusions were in the past, when Carmel did do their own election. And number two, I'd like to know Carmel is currently doing their own election for this upcoming November, because I think I've read that they are doing their own election. But I could be wrong, because I'm wrong.
I will look into what Carmel is doing. I can tell you, your decision in the past, every time, has been to consolidate. Yeah, every time.
Some are in our archives. If this has been, there's somewhere we have how much it would cost us. From the that was in the past, and then it's before we went to the but I think one of the things trying to manage polling places.
Yeah.
And all of the different ways people can vote now, which really means a whole lot more tricky and more difficult, because
Yeah.
the state government is really watchful, especially over elections, so that you're not eschew them.
From a policy standpoint, it makes a lot of sense. Because then the voters get one ballot, they can vote for everything except the election. And if you were to run your own, voters would get one ballot for everything except the airport, and then one separate ballot for the airport. And
what you're saying is probably true. I just.
Yep.
And the discussion before, maybe a one-off special.
I'll take
It's
it.
something you recently, but you did exactly the same thing we're doing. And my understanding was that they voted to do all that.
Yeah, I will take a look.
Yeah, a simple call.
Yeah, I'll find out what the meeting is, and we'll put that.
Madam Chair, let me make a motion to, adopt resolution.
Yep. Do I have a second on your motion?
Stable.
Second? Calls question? I'll call it.
Director Pick,
Yes.
Director Leffel,
Yes.
Director Sabo,
Yeah.
Chair Miller,
Yes,
Thank you very much. Review or work on, sorry, the time is not here. So I think that she might just choose to do it.
Okay, thank you, Director Russell. I was asked to research the availability and investigate the availability of compensation and benefits to board members. I wanted to ask again for help with that process. Tim made some connections with CalPERS, to do some of the investigation. I appreciate his help on that. There are two components here. One is compensation and one is benefits. I'm going to separate those. You currently receive the maximum compensation available under the government. Currently, the meeting stipend is $105 per meeting, with a maximum of 6 meetings per month. There is a CPI escalator in there, I believe. So I think it's $5 per year that it goes up. It's not a CPI, it's not a percentage. Memory serves me. Anyway, our resolution does include the automatic increase, when it gets increased by the state. So when the state approves the increase, we automatically $105 per year at the moment, with a maximum of 16 per month. So there's no availability to adjustment having said that, there is board members may be eligible for medical, dental, vision, and life insurance benefits. I will tell you only in government can they do like they classify board members as employees in some ways and non-employees in other ways. So for example, for your $105 per month or per meeting stipend, you are employees and you get a W-2 at the end of the year. Back in the day, many years ago, we used to come in and they didn't like that. And the reason why they didn't like that is because they didn't get their automatic, tax withdrawals from those. So they said, no, you're employees for the purpose of compensation. It is the IRS, yeah. Amazingly enough, the interest are around them. As it relates to pension benefits, you are not employees for purposes of pension benefits. So you're not eligible for any pension benefits. You're not accountable. However, the contract does include the opportunity for employees, including elected officials, including board members, to take advantage of medical, dental, vision, and life insurance benefits. Those are the, I call them the big four. Those are the four things that are offered to employees that can also be offered to board members. They are currently not offered to you folks as board members of the Monterey Airport District. In order to do that, we would need to pass a separate resolution authorizing board members to take advantage of medical benefits, dental benefits, vision benefits, life insurance benefits. And then of course, if at some point you then cease being a board member, then you immediately, there's no continuation of benefits other than through COBRA. Just like when an employee leaves employment, then the benefits cease and you'll be responsible for the cost. As I mentioned in the staff report of the budget effect, the ultimate cost will depend on the scope of the benefits that are accrued and the contribution towards benefits for each board member. For example, you have bargaining units that you contribute a certain amount towards medical benefits. The employee will cover the difference, whether they're single, married with children, married with dependents, family, whatever their situation is. You offer a flat amount to employees. Board members can only get the maximum amount of benefit that you contribute for the employee towards benefits. So you would be prohibited, for example, to say, well, and I'm just using this as an example. You'd be prohibited from saying, well, for employees, we're going to offer $500 per month, but for board members, we want to offer 100% coverage, whatever they choose. You would not be able to do that. You can only offer to yourself the same thing that you offer to your employees. You can't get you cannot get preferential treatment. The reason why I bring that up is some have tried. I know that shocks you to hear that, but some have tried to do that. As you see in the budget effect, again, we budget for maximum possible exposure. And because there are 5 board members, if you were to authorize medical benefits, medical dental vision, and life insurance benefits, we would budget the maximum amount for all board members because we would have to, right? Because we don't know if all board members are going to take it or not. And so the maximum budget we would need to reserve, the amount we would need to reserve in the budget would be $186,130 per year, which would be the maximum total contribution that could occur in the event benefits were utilized. Now, it has been suggested that I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. It has been suggested that you have multiple ways of showing things. So here we have, I created a few slides to go through this, and code where the government code giveth in one section, taketh away in others. You're excluded from participating in PERS pursuant to 22.760 subsection C. Potential benefits that are available are medical, dental, vision, life insurance. It would require a separate resolution to be passed by the board. That would then make board members eligible. Technically, that resolution would be directing us to amend the contract with CalPERS so that we would include board members as eligible for these benefits. As of right now, the contract does not include board members or elected officials. And I did a little graphic here. This is my little attempt to show the board. And then the arrow is you pass the resolution, and then of course, I couldn't resist from kids, that whole what was it, Schoolhouse Rock, and conjunction junction, what's your function? Well, there's the bill on Capitol Hill. I'm going to change it to say resolution. You'd have to pass a resolution to be entitled to medical, dental, vision, and life insurance. That you can pick. You can also select one or more of these if you want just medical, but not dental, vision, life insurance. If you're going to do that, I mean, if you're going to pick one, I don't know why you wouldn't offer all four, but this is America, you can do that. Right? Anyway, so that is the extent of my discussion. You do have that option available to you. Director Sabel, you mentioned the city of Bell. Interesting. No, of course. But interestingly enough, as a result of the city of Bell, city council members can vote to modify their pay and benefits, but it does not go into effect until after the next election. So that because of the city of Bell, they went and the legislature modified the government code for cities so that they can adjust their pay, they can adjust their benefits, but it is not effective for them. It is effective for those that are elected in the next term. And then for those whose election is not in the next general election, but the one after this, so the effect is staggered. It's not until each seat is re-elected or elected that it becomes in effect. They did not, and I suspect this is an oversight, but they did not make that applicable to special districts. It's only effective for cities. By the location in the government code where they place it, it is only effective for cities. But that's probably because that one city was a little fast and loose with the rule. So, a lot. So, anyway, happy to take direction from you. This is something that if you want us to do, we would come back with. We didn't draft a resolution for your consideration today because we thought, why do all the work if the pleasure of the board is to not do that? If the pleasure of the board is to go that direction, we will draft the documents necessary, bring it back at a subsequent meeting for your approval. Then we will work with CalPERS to make that happen. I suspect that the implementation period would probably be between 60 and 120 days. That's sort of what we were advised. There's only so much we can control. We don't control CalPERS, so we do the documents to them as soon as they amend the contract. Great, but that we need to be about 60 to 120 days if that's the pleasure of the board. Happy to answer any questions and take direction of the board on this matter.
Director Miller?
Oh, I'm sorry. There's one other point I do need to make. These benefits would be in primary position for anybody who doesn't have medical, dental, vision, life insurance at the moment. If you have it, then this would be in backup position. If you are of Medicare age or are getting other, federal benefits, it would be in backup position absolutely in all situations. So that's a piece of that.
And I will open this up to public comment if there is anyone who has comment on it.
Just
Let
a
me stop
second.
sharing my screen here. There we go.
No members of public.
Okay, we have no members of the public currently with us. Director Miller? Howard, comments?
I don't have any questions if that's what you're asking.
Yes, it is. Thank you. Your face is getting better. Director Smith?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't think any of us are doing this for pay benefits. When you say it's $180,000 added to the budget, that you have to carve out, it's an FTE. You just gotta debate over whether to hire, and we are hiring accordingly, staff. This strikes me as certainly not something else. That's all I have.
Thank you. Director Staples?
Yeah. A couple of things you might think about help me understand better in that ordinance here. One, when you talk about carving out $6,000, that's not the number that we are necessarily spending. It does vary by whether or not an individual board member would elect to take advantage of various plans to do medical and all that sort of stuff. And if in fact we have a lot of senior citizens around here, with the exception of maybe one right now, and then they would be excluded from, or in other words, Medicare will come in ahead of anything CalPERS will provide, so CalPERS. And I don't know exactly what the impact would be, and it would be helpful without going to major gyrations, and what the real cost would be for the current board members at our age, and the impact on all that for these various things. Because I see some merit to this. There may be nice to have an attraction, a automatic attraction for younger people to put themselves, run for office on this board. Traditionally, as long as I've been on the board, everybody, for the most part, have been senior citizens, at least of Medicare age, and I think there may be some merit.
Pardon me, got that right while we were on.
That's true, yeah. And so, in other words, I don't want to project it out again because the number. Yeah, I don't want to project it out again, but the number of $186,000 may be almost next to nothing. Because I don't know how the contract works with CalPERS and all that. So I don't even know what benefit, whether the benefits would even be worth it to me, as a senior citizen. But if I was now 48 years old, maybe more to me.
Yeah. So here's how this works. We would, just as with, I'll utilize the position we have to budget for our custom practice. We budget the maximum amount of the salary. What is the top step? Because you don't know if you're going to have a yeah. So, but yeah, but here's the issue. Again, and I'll pick on the board members who I'll pick on. For example, anybody who is getting Medicare, right, could sign up for this, and that would be a secondary insurance position. You can have as many insurance policies as you want. They're going to fight about, they may have a discussion about which one is primary, secondary, tertiary, quaternary, and so which order, right? They're going to fight about what was the order. Now, there's sort of, the method of insurance at some point, right? Which is why people don't have too much for, medical insurance policies, right? The life insurance policy, for example, it wouldn't matter how many policies you have if there's an event. I'll use that if there's an event, all of them would hit, right? And so, what is the actual cost? It depends on how many people sign up. You may look at to decide, I think it's beneficial to have that in the secondary position because Medicare doesn't cover very much, or they cover a certain amount. And this would be the secondary position. Another board member may look at it and say, it's not worth it to me. I'd rather not have a headache. I just have Medicare. I'm good. Another board member may say, I've got, I'm covered through a spouse's employer. I'm covered. Great. Someone else may say, hey, I've got benefits from my former military service. I'm good. I don't need. It depends on who signs up for it. The fact that you have insurance from somewhere else will not prevent you from signing up. The question is, you could still, sign up. The cost would be the same, whether it's in primary insurance or secondary insurance. This policy costs a certain amount, and so we would have to budget that amount, assuming all 5 board members actually did. Spending is a totally different deal. It is. Spending is a totally different deal, but remember that budget has to pencil out. And again, well, this puts it in a pretty good position. But again, this is a policy, and I'm not in favor or opposed to it. I'm just laying the cards on the table and telling you, here's how it is. We would have to budget for it. Would we have to spend it? Depends on how we start.
Okay, I guess my request, getting more information before we have to making decisions here, because I don't know what I'm doing. I know what age I am, I know what insurance company I have, and what I do, what I don't have. I don't even know what would provide. So I think there is some merit to consider, particularly for making us a little bit more attractive to younger folks that we may want to have one draw. So additional information over some period of time would be appropriate, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I'm happy to share.
My thing is, I would not like that time on current board because of the fact that could change in November of what the costs are. It could change completely with the 2 board members up and then again in 2 more years. So what for me, running for this airport was a love of the community and a reason to be involved and a way to give back. And it's never about money. It's just not. And so I am not of the opinion that we would draw any better quality board member by offering it. I don't believe that it is effective expense, no matter what it is. And go back to it. We could say right now, 3 of us would take it, or 4 of us would take it, 1 of us would do whatever. But that does not mean that after January that we don't have complete change in that and the cost will go completely a different place. So I am not in favor of moving forward with this at this time. I just don't think it's a cost of the move. And it goes back to what Director Stable talked about earlier. When he argued against hiring additional staff, if we have a tight budget, I just don't think this is something that we should put on there. And I think we held our staff to certain pay raises this year. We know that those pay raises have not kept up with CPI, which is tough for me to say, you're doing the work and this is what you get. And now I'm showing up here once or twice a month and I'm going to get X amount in deficit. So for me, it's just not the right time. And I will say, when I came on board, I did not have Medicare. I was on COBRA from my former employer at about $100 And I went for about a year without vocational insurance while I was waiting for my over right now. So I have been in a position where insurance was important to me. It would not have made, it did not make the difference of whether or not I was on this board or went to find a school board where I might have been compensated more appropriately. So I'm just, to me, it's about community service. And that's what it is. So, Director Miller, are you still with us? So I guess we have an action item on this, but the question is, do we want to continue this or do we want to let it die?
Yeah, the question is, do you want to give us direction to bring this back with a resolution for action, or do you want to?
I have a follow-up question.
Certainly.
First of all, let me clarify that my request of staff to provide maybe some sample information, usually representative sample of what it would look like if board members of a certain age, board members not a certain age, what would that look like in terms of cost? Asking staff to provide additional information, it's not a waste of time. I am a board member and I'm requesting information, so I don't ever want to waste the staff member's time. On the other hand, I'm being asked to make a decision. And so going forward, all I asked for was some additional information regarding CalPERS benefits and maybe creating a sample or an example of what things would look like. That would be helpful. I just wanted to elaborate.
Director Sabo, to help you meet that level of understanding, we're fortunate. All this information is publicly available. You can go online to CalPERS. You can go on as a guest, an employee, or an employer. All the health care coverages are listed. We participate in 4 different plans, an HMO, a couple of gradations of PPOs, and one other plan. Again, this is all information is all publicly available. There's nothing, if you want to understand even how it affects Medicare, there's a section on the insurance would provide a supplement to your Medicare at a different price than the maximum price that's being used in our analysis. So all the information is available. You simply go on to CalPERS. We can provide you the URLs, the locations. We can tell you the district or the territory that we participate in, and that could help you understand the rates and how the insurance is done.
Or I think yes or no is knowing what I'm dealing with here, rather than just $186,000, which may end up being zero.
For any coverage, it would not be zero. So if you're providing coverage, there is going to be an amount. Just an estimate on the range, it would be between 50% of what's included at 187,000. So if you're only one person, not a family, we quoted a family a rate. So if you're one person, it would be approximately 50+% of what is being quoted in the analysis. But again, it's all circumstantial. It's what your situation is. Are you on Medicare? Are you married? Are you going to cover your spouse? It goes on and on. So it's something, there's a lot of variables to look at. But again, the information is publicly available. More than willing to help you get that information.
Whether we go forward or not. So that's kind of my position here. Delay this particular choice until we have an opportunity to look at your URLs and understand a little bit what. There's also a consideration here if you have alternative coverage from your spouse. We actually, I think the district actually gives the person $300 or $400 to take advantage of the alternative spousal coverage. Is that true?
That's correct. It's actually $500 a month.
Yeah.
It's not a motion.
No, it just needs to be consensus. Yeah.
Director Miller, do you, want staff to do additional, work on this and bring this back in a later date?
I'll go with whatever the rest of the board decides. I'm having a difficult time hearing the full conversation.
All right, Director Kick?
Madam Chair, I think the only, so my issue with giving staff guidance to develop scenarios is without some further guidance, we're really asking them to go figure out what some permutations might look like, which from the staff perspective would be quite an exercise to do it. But I think if there are specific concerns, I'd like to hear them or directing staff to do that. Otherwise, I think what we're talking about is this budget item, line item, roughly $186,000. And then whatever the cost is going to depend on the composition of the council, rather the board, and the composition of each board member's family, age, all that, a lot of criteria. Doesn't strike me as a terribly good use of staff time to send them forward without some very specific direction. So I would be in favor of that without very specific direction. My other thought is that we have a director absent. I don't know this topic. I don't know who raised it. I don't know who's concerned about it. But to the extent that there's interest from our absent director, perhaps should be given an opportunity to comment at a future meeting before we completely stop further movement on this. So perhaps tabling it. Certainly entertain that.
Director Sabo, do you have anything to add? Do you have anything else to add on?
Yeah, I do. Consider what staff can provide us within a reasonable period of time. So like information like the URLs.
It's manuals, basically, is what they are. And yes, it's the policy coverage. It's the policy coverages. It's a pamphlet and a series of booklets that you can go through and look at the various plans and the rates and the coverage.
Do you do that? Do you do that on staff right now? Do you give them a staff?
We do. We actually do. We give them a series of documents that they can choose from and see what they want to select for their coverages out of the 4 different plans. And basically, it's a document that you're asking them in affecting Medicare coverage. It's a much broader scope to look at than just traditional employees who typically are not of retirement age.
Well, whatever you got, I don't really think of cabling. Whatever you got, staff, share that. Or individuals not to look at it because they burn our eyes or something. Well, then at least we're more informed than we are right now.
We'd be glad to provide it.
That would be my motion. Table the item until next week, at least next week.
So I would not be in favor of us moving forward on. We believe that at this time, it would take quite a bit of staff time while we have a lot of things going on. And the opportunity to add another $100,000 potential maximum to our budget for this year. With the budget that we just passed, there's a lot of consideration on cutting costs. I just don't think it's appropriate. So I'm not in favor of moving forward with this.
He's muted.
Sorry, I'm back. So you're not in favor of moving forward, and directors Pick and Sabo are?
It sounds that way, yes.
Well,
Let me. Madam Chair?
Yeah.
Just to be clear, I am generally not in favor of this additional burden on the budget. I'm not in favor of directing staff to do additional research about very, very specific guidelines. My concern for the absent director was that we don't know her mind, but she is absent. So in general terms, I am not in favor of without very, very specific direction, which I haven't heard yet, of continuing yet.
yeah, I cannot hear Director Sabo.
That's because he's not setting up to his microphone.
Well, I apologize. I'm not speaking out here, Carl. So, my motion was to table it to at least the next meeting to obtain additional information. Partly as a courtesy to the board member who was not present, who raised this subject. Number two, to get additional information equivalent to what we provide to employees, so that I can make, as a board member, I can make an important decision on this. And so I don't know how more specific that request of staff is, but whatever you provide to the staff, then provide that to the board members. And you need more specifics on that to understand what I'm asking for in terms of staff support.
No, we'll get you the documents as if you were enrolling. We'll outline the different plans that there are, and you can take a look at it. And again, regardless of whether this moves forward or not, we'll get you that stuff so you can look at it if you like, public information.
Well, yeah, you can get it, but we've already decided we're going to come to, there's no point at my time. So, courtesy to our absent board member, number two, to be more informed before we make a decision, go, no go on this sort of thing. My motion is to for the table this until the next meeting and bring it up at that time for discussion and decision.
Okay, we have a motion to table it and bring it back. Do we have a second on that motion? The motion died for lack of a second.
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
I'll move that we direct staff to do no further work on this topic at this time. With the understanding, obviously, that this can come back anytime, whether it be in the months ahead or after the next election. But for now, that'll be over.
Now, a second on that motion? I'll second it. Okay. That motion, we'll have a roll call.
Director Pick,
Yes.
Director Leffel,
Yes.
Director Sabo,
No.
Chair Miller.
Yes,
Thank you. Thank you for the- Okay, our last item for action is to approve the board conferences and events for fiscal year 2023. There was a list of conferences and events in your packet. And so you have some selections for yourself. The rules are, as we go forward, that you can select 2 off of the list. And in addition to that, the Monterey conference is the 3rd, because it's right here in our backyard. So that is a given, I guess I would say. And then you can select 2 additional conferences.
10.
Madam Chair, question.
Yes, sir.
Are we approving this list and full stop, or are we approving this list with input as to which conferences we?
It's for budgeting purposes, it gives the staff an idea of where we're going and who's going where. It's not hard, fast, because we have sometimes something else has come up with all of us where we're like, hey, I'd rather swap out this one for that one. But it gives everyone some kind of an idea. It also gives us, all of us, an idea of who's going if we want to set up here and do something or do something.
And also, it helps the board secretary register you for these conferences as well. Typically take care of most of them. So you guys help us with that too. Understanding that you might not have seen it or looked at it, you don't have it, but we can direct you around, especially if you want to.
Well, and it allows us to take advantage of the lower rates because we can get in with the early bird rate as opposed to 15 minutes before it started. So I'll start and I have the intention of going to Minneapolis in September and to Denver in June and to the Monterey conference. Carl, can you hear us?
I can. Do you want me to list the courses
Yes.
I'm interested in?
Yes.
The annual conference in Minneapolis, the short course in Monterey, and the annual conference in Denver for AAAE, ACI, SWAHI, and AAAE.
Okay, thank you. Director Stable.
Christian, you said, you need this information or you could register, by indicating that my preferences, particular conferences, you automatically going to register.
No, we will follow up. Most of these don't have registrations open yet. Once the registration's open, they'll be contacted and asked if it's still, and then you'll get registered.
Okay.
But specifically, the Spite and Summer Conference is available. Take advantage of the early bird
Yeah.
registration, then we can send out.
ACI, my preferences are ACI in Minneapolis in September. SWAI annual, and a short course in Monterey, and ACI Board of Commissioners Conference in the city of PDD.
Director Pick.
Thank you, Chair. Definitely my interest at this point are the annual conference and exhibitor showcase in Palm Desert and the AAAE annual conference and exposition. And I will also attend the conference in Monterey.
Thank you. Again, we will, these will be brought to you as registration institutes. Confirm registration at that time.
So that everybody knows, I am doing the conference, but I've already registered to see myself. It's not on the report time. Me doing that. So you all have.
Where you go in the airport.
I am representing special districts from Monterey County. And I'm also attending the LAFCO conference, representing LAFCO, Monterey County. board committee reports and acceptance. Mr. Miller, are you staying with us? Are we going to stay 99?
Yeah, if with the board's concurrence, I would like to sign off at this time.
Thank you so much for hanging in there with us. You're a trooper.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay, you want to take a 5-minute break?
Yes.
Okay. Welcome back. We are back in session. It is overtime. And we are reconvening our we are on item 8, which is board committee reports and acceptance of department report. So, does anyone from the public have to do any item? We have no public.
There's no public.
So, we have no public. And do any of my ordinance of staff reports that are that I can comment? Director Sabo?
No.
Director Bill?
No.
All right. So if we can go standing committee, reports, budget and finance.
So we had a rather brief meeting. There was a number of clarifications and informational items that I could go to Ms. Morello and Ms. Joe regarding things that I didn't understand in the presentation of the financials. Resulting in maybe a little clarification going forward in our financial presentation of the board. No decisions were made in that regard. During the finance committee, I shared all of the concerns that I have with the upcoming budget that we addressed today, and reiterated the language that I provided today. So, at the end of the day, there was no real recommendation for action. Finance committee, we're there, record level.
Yes, we did discuss a couple of things, and one were the market expenses. And I think, just for my fellow board members, when you look at the revenue report and the financial summary that prepares, that one of the items in there was the $20,000 soccer sponsorship. So it was the first time we've ever done that, and whether or not we will continue, we don't know at this point, but it is, that was the thing that we actually, the budget. And the other things were all things that Director Steve asked for clarification and have. No, I was going to suggest that since you had a statement that you give that to the meeting, include it in the minutes so that all of your comments are captured. Okay, I just want to say that your thoughts and concerns. The other item that we did have a fairly lengthy discussion on the CARES Act grant and on the balances remaining and the purposes of what money's been used for. And I think it's important. This report that's in our package was April 30th, and 2 days or so ago, we voted to draw $4 million out of that grant money and to use it to pay down our unfunded liability with PERS, which has grown since we paid it down the last time. So that balance on there So, but the money has been gone out of, will be gone out of our reserves, or has been expenditures, so that we can take advantage of the $400,000 reduction in $368,000 reduction in payment for 2023. So just so everybody understands that. I guess the mechanics of it. Those are the things that we. Certainly.
Did come up, I asked a question, about our funded budgets and our year-to-date, budget to actuals as to what are the limits to spending in a particular category or groups of categories. I think in our governance manual, we authorize the executive director to move between budget categories to some amount of money, $20,000 to $30,000. I'm not sure. And I asked the question, well, since we are over budget in a number of categories in the finance and the administration area, that what is the limit before we start either one, drawing money out of other budget categories, or two, come back for an amendment to the budget? And the answer that came back was a little confusing. It doesn't matter how we spend different budget categories. Correct me if I'm wrong, unless it affects the total bottom line of the district. So, having said that, I can see your ways with bated breath here. I may have stated it incorrectly here, but I didn't get an answer as to budget categories versus total budget bottom line.
I think we covered many aspects of the variances, and the stated amount for contract and expenditure changes within the the final approved expenses is $30,000. You stated that correctly. The challenge is this: during the course of the year, we amend the budget when it becomes materially needed, because something has changed so drastically that we have to do something. Many of the variances, and Director Leffel pointed out the Monterey FC expenditure of $20,000. That was brought to the board as a discussion item, and it was disclosed. We can't, if we're going to adjust a little over our limit, does it make sense to continually amend the budget? So the variances that exist right now are all things the board has been aware of. We discussed those yesterday. Andrew Brown, for example, the presentation related to supporting the terminal effort. All those expenses had been discussed. We could modify the budget. We could amend the budget again for those little differences if we consider them material enough to do so. What we target is managing the departments, managing the overall operating income. So we manage the revenue, the expenses, and the operating income at a top level. So it really comes down to what effort do you want us to put into presenting the information? Do you want us to, if we go over by $15,000 on a particular line item, does it make sense to go through the effort of completely recompiling the budget, bringing it back to you for approval? That, I think, is potentially the issue. Again, many of the variances, there were 3 specific ones we talked about yesterday. Those were the ones driving those variances in marketing, public relations, and air service. And again, it was all stuff the board was aware of. So from a technical standpoint, I am not being completely versed in public policy. I think how we manage it is acceptable from an enterprise basis. And it's really, what do you want us to do?
You are seeing it, you are aware of it, you're looking again, we really managed to departments. Yes, to line items, but in some departments, like marketing, where we do not know today, when their service being opportunities that come up all the time. We can do our best guess, but that's what we do. Yeah, but if something comes up that is a value to the airport, then we bring it forward and we ask, or also maintenance department. This is something that we never, we guess, but we don't know. And we never know exactly what repairs are necessary for the trend to make sure that might have variances in that. But we disclose that everyone. And we talk.
And that explains it. And all, the reason for my asking the question, and I'm saying this for the benefit of the public and the board, the reason for it is that we have an established procedure. And to simply say, well, we told you about it, 2 months ago when nobody objected to it, is not a reason to ignore our existing approved budget, in my opinion. Possibly when we have things like the sponsorship. Say, at the same time that we, I guess, gave approval to that, then we need to say, and amend the budget according or something like that. But if in fact we are telling our managers who are responsible for their departmental budget, go ahead, whatever what's authorized to spend in this category, that category, don't pay attention to that, because if you're spending it, it must be material. And so I'm trying to conform what we do to what's in our governance manual. And that is the reason, not to impede doing smart things.
And Chair, from there,
Yes, sir.
vitally important. Director Sabo, and I appreciate you being able to think about staff. I think it gets to what Tim said. We set the policy. So whatever those policies are, presumably we'll comply with. And we're not, that's a different issue. I have yet to see an agenda item, I'm sure, come up here, short order, where we are approving a specific dollar amount for expenditure. And then somewhere in that staff report, it will outline not only that expense, but how that expense impacts the budget. And if there's a variance to the budget, exceeds the budget, I would expect it would be called out in the financial impact of the staff report and be part of our consideration and part of our approval. And the question as to whether that requires a budget amendment, I think is where I would hope, and I look forward to learning more about our financial policies. We do that only a couple of times a year, and that those accrue. Each individual decision by the board is important, distinct, and made with context. But that budget amendments occur only a handful of times. Again, all of that should be in our rules and regulations and our policy manual, and complying with it. It's enormously important because it gets you board oversight over staff and board oversight, you share responsibility over taxpayer dollars spent. So appreciate it. Thanks.
All right, next item is air service, marketing, and community relations, Directors Miller and we have no more, Mr. Bennett.
Since there's no more Mr. Miller, I will briefly, Madam Chair, just say that I'm thrilled to be on this committee and look forward to my first meeting.
All right. Airport.
It would not have a financial.
No, there was not.
Airport property development and leases. We have no Director Sonny and Director Miller. So,
And staff. What can I?
Local jurisdiction liaison, we did not meet. And local agency formation commission. I made the call on Friday or Thursday, actually, that we will not have a meeting this month. There are not any items that have come until it looks like September. And at that point, we should have Soledad's housing. And we should also have an item coming forward in Seaside that would include the old nurses barracks and another piece of property, all with the new Bayport project. So September will be a busy month, and we do not meet in July at all. That is always on the fall. So we'll see what happens, but there'll be nothing for me to report in the next 2 months. Regional Taxi Authority will meet in July. Transportation Agency Director Sable.
Nothing else that really relates to the airport, as I indicated, last report, the MC committee has now taken a different approach to the agenda to bring to the board, and basically everything that used to, many of the items that used to get board of director votes on has now been moved to the consent agenda. And so the only things that are coming to the board pretty much in the last 3 months and items related to legislative priorities and things that AMC support, not support. So nothing, in fact, the airport.
Bill, is there any change in any kind of a timeline of what's going on with the laptop?
No, I keep asking that question, and each time things come up, funding, the highway further down the calendar timeline. Latest was to move with another planning and design efforts, another 12 months in the future. So I'm particularly holding my breath, although I've been rather outspoken about the need for improving certain intersections on Highway 68 to improve our flow from Salinas and the central Salinas Valley to the airport as a benefit to travelers and to the airport. And they move it to another, further downstream. So right now, all the system is placed on Highway 156, Castroville interchange, and also dedicating money to Highway 101 in South County. Because right now, as I think we all know, traveling down 101 with all those turnoffs and turn-ons is kind of a death-defying experience. So I think there are a lot of efforts and money being allocated towards providing alternatives to people doing U-turns on Highway 101 in South County. And the whole rail station thing at Salinas, the connection to what's the next city up Highway 101?
Gilroy.
What's that?
Gilroy.
Gilroy. It's next to Gilroy. I think that's a lot of discussion, and that's moving forward. That's sort of the
Okay. Thank you. Special District Association, no meeting until July. So Association of Monterey Bay Area Government. Director Sable. I did see that last night or tonight, one of them is their final community hearing on the housing allotments.
I did review the primary number there.
Pending requests for future agenda items. How is it? We lost it. So we have a minute and get an update on where we are on personnel. Do you all have anything you would like to add to future agendas? He just stepped out. Discussion of future agenda items. Okay, Director Steve.
Well, the reason I asked about that is, I think it's important that we start to move forward. And we're doing our government plan, so that we can work on it. It seems to, I think we, last time we had it, what, 18? Yeah. So, I think it's appropriate that we, get on with that process. And straight with, you know, personnel and maybe elaborate on where we are on the two items that are proposed for future agenda, the administrative manual and the government.
Yes, I was asked to include the administrative and personal policy manual was going to be on this agenda, but given the fact that Director Lapierre, executive director Lapierre was out, Chair Miller made the call to put that on the next agenda. So that will be on the next agenda.
That was the first one.
Yes, that will, once that's dialed in, that would dictate some changes to the governance manual. So the governance manual will be the month following whenever you approve the personnel, administrative and personal policy.
And I would bring up the question. I'm you did. For implications from maybe buying compromising.
All right. I would entertain a motion for adjournment.